For the first time in 11 months, we are enjoying back-to-back trips to Club Dub. We're looking at the Dolphins' 34-19 victory over the Raiders here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. Dolphins punching a ticket to Club Dub for the second consecutive week, a 34-19 victory over the Las Vegas Raiders at Hard Rock Stadium. Want to give a special shout out to our everydayers. It is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it. Here on the Locked On Network, I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it is easy to get started. It was easy for the Dolphins to get started on some scoring drives against the Raiders. We're going to be looking at the offensive efficiency, which is amongst the best individual game performances that any team in the league has had against any opponent thus far this season. We're going to look at Brock Bowers and why he managed to tear the Dolphins a new one, which he did throughout this game. And we're going to give out a few game balls along the way as well. But let's start with this offensive performance for the Dolphins. Just by the numbers, 25 first downs, 18 of them coming through the air. They go 8 of 12 on third down, 2 for 2 on fourth down, a little bit of a momentum swing after a really rough end of season last year and a really rough beginning of season this year on fourth downs. Miami going 2 for 2 in addition to 75% on third downs is just massive. They average 5.5 yards per play. They struggle running the football. They had too many minus plays. They had some explosive runs. They had a couple nice gains between the tackles, but the negative runs on the edges without Alec Ingold yet again this week were a really tough hurdle to overcome for an efficient day running the football. But Jake Bailey did not show up. I believe Chris Kaufman from 3 yards per carry had the stat. It's the first time in the Mike McDaniel era the Dolphins did not punt and did not turn the football over in a single game in the Mike McDaniel era. And it's been 2.5 years of Mike McDaniel calling the offense for the Dolphins. Cracking 30 points as well for the first time since Washington last year. So this is a really efficient day for Miami offensively. And it's kind of the continuation of the theme of what we explored last week with the win against the Rams on Monday night / Tuesday. It's these extended scoring drives that the Dolphins just continue again and again and again. Now, we had the reemergence of the explosive plays with a fourth quarter coverage bust from the Raiders that helped put this game on ice. But their first possession, 14 plays, 70 yards, over 8 minutes time of possession. Their second drive goes 16 plays for 52 yards, over 8 minutes time of possession. They have an end of half sequence that makes you want to rip your hair out a little bit, where they go 4 plays, 25 yards, starting backed up in their own territory. Did not pass the 50-yard line with no timeouts in 45 seconds. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But then they come out of half, force a punt. They go 14 plays, 97 yards, 7 minutes and 47 seconds time of possession. Then they go 10 plays, 60 yards, 5 minutes and 44 minutes time of possession. And then they go 4 plays, 70 yards in 1 minute and 4 seconds with the big explosive catch and run by Jonnu Smith, who has been a revelation for the Dolphins in a passing game perspective. Tua Tagovailoa finishes this game against the Raiders. He took 2 first-half sacks, 28 of 36 for 288 yards, 3 touchdowns. Those 2 sacks lost 17 yards. The one sack that Tua took was a frustrating one where we feel the pocket compressing and we turn our eyes to the line of scrimmage and we get boxed in and then we get stripped. And thankfully, Kendall Lamb jumps on top of the football. What could have been a really critical misstep for the Dolphins in the midst of one of those scoring drives. But in all, Tyreek Hill catches 7 passes. Jonnu Smith gets 8 targets. Both those guys targeted 8 times. And then it's pretty evenly distributed the rest of the way. Devon Achane and Odell Beckham each get 4 targets. Malik Washington targeted 3 times. Julian Hill targeted 3 times. Jalen Waddle targeted 3 times. Durham Smythe, Jalen Wright, each 1 target, 1 catch for just a handful of yards. The efficiency of the passing game and the patience of the passing game was what I really liked out of this game. And I actually thought the protection got better as the game went along, as far as neutralizing the presence of Max Crosby. That's not a small deal, and Miami to be rewarded with what was one of the most efficient single season or this season single game performances. Miami finished with averaging over 4.8 points per possession in this game. That is the second best mark of the 2024 season, behind only Detroit tonight or today, also in the 1:00 slate. And they trounced Jacksonville 52-6. So not a lot of possessions, but a weird first half where you had effectively 4 possessions and then Miami's 45-second sequence at the end of the first half. Great ball control. I thought you had good decision-making from Tua Tagovailoa. I didn't think you had any of the crazy throws. Tua is good for usually 1 or 2 of those in any given game. And he didn't give you one this week. He just had the sack that he took that you wanted him to maybe show a little bit more restraint to just take the sack. I applauded the second sack that he took because it was in scoring territory. He said, okay, we didn't do anything crazy, put the ball in harm's way. But the balance, now Jonnu Smith being a headache as teams continue to key on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Tyreek coming alive in his own right, including the touchdown that he had on an extended play. There's a lot of good here offensively, and wasn't all good. I think you can look at the running game. We mentioned some of those minus plays. Miami goes 26 carries for 82 yards. They had a long run of 30 by Devon Achane, in which he almost scored. Jalen Wright had a rough go, but Jalen Wright also didn't get a lot of help in some of the opportunities that he had on the edge. Raheem Mostert finished his 3 for -2, was questionable with a hip injury that he suffered early in the game. So fighting some personnel setbacks, but still finding a way to chug along through all that to one of the most efficient offensive single game performances of the season. Look, I get the Raiders defensively. They were banged up. They didn't have Christian Wilkins. They didn't have Malcolm Kuntz. They didn't have Nate Hobbs. I understand all that. But you still got to go out and play and execute. And the Dolphins did that in this game at a very high level. And I think you can especially, and we'll look at some of this stuff a little later in the week, the offensive efficiency numbers relative to the league over the last month. There's a lot of encouraging numbers there for the concerns of, has everybody figured out the Mike McDaniel offense? Well, I think some of the personnel buttons that they've pushed are really coming to life for you in this stretch of play if you're the Miami Dolphins. So a solid, ball secure, explosive play. That was one of the bold takes we had on Friday, right? Was that the explosive play was going to come back. Sure enough, Jonnu, and it was a coverage bust nonetheless. It wasn't one of those deep shots to Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. But I thought it was something that was maybe necessitated, not an English guy, based off of the structures that you were getting. And this is a very efficient way to play offensive football if this is where teams are going to give you space. Tua still had a couple of really nice throws in this game, too. I thought the corner that he threw to Jonnu Smith against cover 2 with the corner squatting up, very similar to the corner that he threw to Malik Washington. The ball was just placed in a different spot. With Malik Washington, smaller receiver against the Rams on the final 4 minutes there at the end of the game on Monday night, he put it on the body. This one to Jonnu Smith is a big-bodied pass target. He puts it up high. It's a lot of good stuff. Now, defensively, you have some questions. Special teams, we have some questions. We're going to get into those next here on Locked On Dolphins. This Club Dub episode, make sure that you stick with us. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it doom scrolling on the internet with the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. Use your time wisely to improve yourself. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, The Great American Story, Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with the readings, quizzes, discussions, or you can just enjoy the lectures. Right now, you can go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale.edu/lockedon. if you're coming out of the 1 o'clock slate and you want a little action this evening with some of the other games that are going on, do so with Prize Picks. Prize Picks, the best way to run your game this season with the best opportunity for real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players in stat projections for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long. With Prize Picks, you can get up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct bets. And they offer you an injury insurance policy. So one of your picks goes out in the first half and does not return, Prize Picks will keep your lineup live. And they also now offer Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today. You get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So download the Prize Picks app. Use code LOCKEDONNFL. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's download the Prize Picks app. Use code LOCKEDONNFL. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Brock Bowers ran his game all over the Dolphins. This was the quintessential Dolphins versus a good receiving tight end experience. And there's plenty of frustration that comes with this because you consider where the rest of the offense was for the Raiders. Jacoby Myers, like just running the ball. And you knew that coming in, running the ball, it was going to be a little bit of tough sledding for the Raiders. I'm doing the math live here. Jacoby Myers had 1 rush for 20 yards on a jet motion handoff up the edge. Outside of that, Alexander Mattison had an 8-yard run. Trey Tucker had a 7-yard run. Gardner Minshew had a 6-yard scramble. Outside of the end around to Jacoby Myers, the Raiders averaged 2.6 yards per carry, 40 yards on 15 attempts. And that includes Minshew picking up 7 out of the 40 with scrambles. So Dolphins' interior defensive line with Zach Sealer, Calais Campbell, Benito Jones, those guys showed up in a big way as far as controlling the interior of the line of scrimmage. And then from a passing game perspective, wide receiver Jacoby Myers, 4 for 28. Trey Tucker, 3 for 28. DJ Turner, 3 for 29. They got 176 yards out of Brock Bowers and Alexander Mattison. And then Amir Abdullah had another 16. So they almost had 200 yards receiving going through Brock Bowers and Alexander Mattison and Amir Abdullah. And a lot of that came after the catch, like the Amir Abdullah touchdown catch that the Raiders scored in the fourth quarter. Kader Kohu coming up, failing to break down inbounds with Miami with a 2-score lead, trying to force a fourth down attempt. And you just fail to break down at the point of first contact, and you give up a touchdown, unfortunately, on a check down out of the backfield. But everybody, I'm sure, is going to want to know about Brock Bowers, who got 16 targets in this game. There's only one other Raiders player that got more than 4 targets, and that was Jacoby Myers. And he got 4 for 28 on 6 targets. It was the Brock Bowers show. I don't know how much of this was a game plan that was content on the Raiders making some mistakes. I don't know how much of this, and you have to go back and watch the All-22 to have like educated opinions on a lot of this kind of stuff. It's very easy, and I think it'd be very easy for me to say, play some man coverage against Brock Bowers. But when you're in nickel, I think part of the challenge here was Storm Duck was the third corner off in this game without Kendall Fuller. Ahead of Cam Smith. Now, Cam got a little bit of run, but Storm Duck got more run than Cam Smith, which is a conversation for another day as far as the outlook of Cam Smith. You don't want to be getting lapped by a UDFA rookie. But how much of this was Scott Turner, the new offensive coordinator, and Norv Turner, who came in, was not a part. He's like a legendary play caller, offensive coordinator, former head coach in the NFL. He's been very successful. He's a great offensive mind. I do think the Raiders did some nice things. I think about the 1 third down conversion where he was in the backfield and they quick snapped Miami and it caught Javon Holland off guard where he could get the corner. Now, you as a defense, you need to be ready to play, right? So it's not excusing the execution of the play. But the Raiders did a lot of things with Brock Bowers to move him all around. And it felt like the Dolphins were content to play zone coverage, box everything in, force them to be methodical going down the field, and rely on a team that has a reputation of making some backbreaking mistakes to make their own mistakes and let that get you out. And to some degree, I think that game plan is a fair reflection of what happened. The Raiders had twice the penalty yardage of the Dolphins. A lot of their penalties came in inopportune times with offensive holding or offensive pass interference. But generally speaking, it was an efficient day for the Raiders offensively too. They go 8 of 14 on third down and 2 for 2 on fourth down. So they're 10 for 16 on third and fourth downs. Gardner Minshew takes care of the football. Obviously, he has a miscommunication as this game is late in the game to throw an interception to Jalen Ramsey, who makes a great play on the ball. But the Raiders, uncharacteristically, I think, efficient despite having no semblance of a ground game, putting Gardner Minshew back in, and then making these significant coaching staff changes. I feel like a lot of this probably stems back from extra preparation to play the football game. And you look at how the Raiders offensively, handled their business. The other key area was the red zone. Miami goes 3 for 4 in the red zone. The Raiders just go 1 of 3 in the red zone. Miami forces them to kick field goals twice in the first half within the touchdown territory. And that proved to be a big piece of the puzzle for the Dolphins in having this game script unfold. Anytime you can go 12 plays, 60-plus yards, and force a field goal, and then go 16 plays, 60-plus yards, and kick another field goal, bend but don't break style of defense in this game, banking on them making mistakes that frankly didn't come until late. Now you had the special teams miscue on the first drive the Raiders had offensively, which was a big time bummer. Calais Campbell probably gets as close as you can to blocking a punt without actually blocking a punt, and his head hits the kicking foot of the punter for running into the kicker in a fresh set of downs that buys them another 9 plays where they go down and score 3 points. That stunk. That was not fun. I was kind of pulling on Calais getting the block there too. That would have been amazing. But nevertheless, the Dolphins defense, I am very much intrigued. And it's not like it was just one player. Like you look at the coverage splits and whether it was the safeties, whether it was the linebackers, whether it was Jalen Ramsey, pretty much anybody that was in the general vicinity of Brock Bowers, unless he dropped the ball like he did on that one down in the red zone, he was catching the football. And he is a great talent too. Like, I don't want to take anything away from Brock Bowers and say, oh, well, the Dolphins didn't do this, the Dolphins didn't do that, or the Raiders had extra preparation. He's a great talent. Like, he's on like a record-setting pace for a rookie tight end. You want it to be better than that, for sure. But I'm curious how Miami's nickel packages and the trust they did or didn't have in their corners on the outside against some speed that the Raiders had on the outside, the game flow itself. I'm just curious how much of this was we're content to force them to methodically work their way down the field, and he's finding soft spaces in zone coverage, which is what it felt like the vast majority of his targets were. But the Raiders did move him around and did a really nice job with that. And you tip your cap to the Raiders for the plan that they built for Brock Bowers in their first game out of the bye with new coaches in place. And the Dolphins should consider themselves fortunate that the offense had a great day. You want to look for more complimentary football. I think more complimentary football probably means more stops because the Raiders, they weren't stopped in the first half. They scored points on both, and they punt to start the second half. Well, you did stop in the first half, and then you gave them a fresh set of downs with a running into the kicker. But you got 3 stops in the second half, courtesy of punt coming out of halftime. The interception on the first play after Miami went up 31-19, and then you kick the field goal trying to milk the clock, and then the Raiders, you keep them in bounds, and it milks the rest of the game clock, and then the game is over. So a fun day. I think probably one that Dolphins fans were stressing and sweating, and then you get into a position where you go 10 plays, 60 yards in the fourth quarter, and you go up 24-12, and then the Raiders go down in 14 plays and 70 yards and score a touchdown and cut it to 5. And I'm sure a lot of Dolphins fans had PTSD of, oh boy, up 2 scores against a not good football team in a high leverage game for you at home at Hard Rock Stadium. This is not comfortable territory. And thankfully they hit the big play and then had a turnover to add a few more extra points onto it and pulled away late in this game to help another one of the bold predictions that we had on Friday come to life was that the Dolphins were going to win this game by multiple scores. They did. So we're going to give out some game balls next here on this Victory Monday post-game Club Dub episode of Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you stick with us. You can take advantage of all of the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more in the same places where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Kudos to you if you had the over in this game. Dolphins Raiders, I believe it was 44 and a half was the game total over in points. And kudos to you if you took the Dolphins -7 or even -7.5. -7 is a lot more comfortable place to live than -7.5, and it kept yo-yoing back and forth between the two. And I'm sure there were some bettors that had it at -7 that were sweating this thing late in the fourth quarter. But Miami ultimately wins this game by 15 points. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So let's talk about some game balls here. You got to start with Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith has a career high in single game receiving yards, 6 catches for 101 yards, the 57-yard touchdown to put this game on ice, 2 scores for him, outruns the defense on the second one, does a nice job with really good concentration on the first one with the Dolphins going for it on 4th down inside the low red zone on a tipped pass from Tua Tagovailoa. Great concentration by Jonnu Smith on that first touchdown the Dolphins had of the day. So it's kind of fitting Jonnu gets the first and last touchdown of the game. And he is definitely my top pick for an offensive game ball recipient for the Miami Dolphins. I would also give a game ball to Tua Tagovailoa. 3 touchdown passes, 288 yards, made a number of off-schedule plays, including that touchdown pass to Tyreek Hill, played an efficient game, did not throw the ball into harm's way. I think even less so than he did against the Raiders, the Rams. This was a little bit more representative, I thought, of the game he played against the Bills. Which was hyper efficient. He was 25 of 28 in that game. Now, he had 8 incompletions on this day. But I thought his decision-making was really, really sound. And just you'd like to have the one sack that he took back where he ends up fumbling the ball and it's recovered by Kendall Lamb. I would give both of those guys game balls. Devon Achane deserves an honorable mention. He had 105 yards of offense in this game for Miami, and obviously had a touchdown around the left end on a nice block from Julian Hill. But I'm going to keep the game balls offensively with Tua Tagovailoa and Jonnu Smith. Defensively, I'm probably going to start with Zach Sealer, who has a sack, tackle for loss. He has the 2-point conversion stuff that he almost got back to the mesh point before the Raiders were even able to hand off the football. I would give an honorable mention to Quentin Bell, who I thought had a number of nice plays in this game. And I'd give my other defensive game ball to Jalen Ramsey, who had a couple of really physical plays, has a couple of tackles in the end game sequence to try to keep the clock running and strike and negate a player's forward momentum before they go out of bounds. I still don't think Amir Abdullah got the first down on that third down catch. They could have set up a 4th down and left the game clock rolling. They reviewed it. They said it was a first down. It's neither here nor there. But Jalen Ramsey also with an interception that helped put some more points on the board and ensure that the Raiders weren't going to full court press you all the way to the end of the game. So those are my 4 picks for game balls. Jonnu Smith, Tua Tagovailoa, Zach Sealer, Jalen Ramsey. Not a lot of love for special teams. Jake Bailey didn't punt. Jason Sanders goes 1 for 1. But a quick roundup across the rest of the league, especially in the AFC East. The Bills and Dolphins are playing, or the Bills and Chiefs are playing now. I don't know what the final outcome of that game is, but I do know that the Rams threw all over the Patriots. Drake May had a nice day passing for the Patriots, who will be a new face at quarterback next week when the Dolphins host the Patriots. But they sacked Drake May in an end game sequence with the Patriots down 6 and then had an interception to seal that game. The Rams beat the Patriots to go back up the Rams to 5-5 on the season. And then the Colts eked out a win against the New York Jets. The only thing that comes remotely as close to good as a Dolphins win is a Jets loss, and the Jets lost to the Colts. Anthony Richardson back in the starting lineup for the Indianapolis Colts. Jets had a chance to go down and score points and take the win at home. Aaron Rodgers is sacked, and the clock runs out there to end that game sequence as well. So a couple of teams in the AFC East dropping games that were pretty ugly in the process. And then there's a big game tonight with the Chargers and the Bengals. Cincinnati sitting at 4-6. That is one to watch if you're looking at the AFC conference standings. There's a case to be made for either team to win the game, especially when you look at the Chargers and their end of season schedule. But I'm probably rooting for the Chargers to knock the Bengals down to 4-7 would be what I'm rooting for. That's going to do it for us here on this Club Dub episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. I appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Enjoy the win. Make yourselves at home. Get comfortable. Drinks are in the back. Club Dub, second straight week for the Dolphins for the first time on this program in 11 months. It's been a long wait, and hopefully they can run it to 3 straight weeks next week at home against the Patriots. I'll be back a little later this week to break down everything I saw from the coaches' film on both offense and defense and start setting the stage for week 12. That's going to do it for me here. Locked On Dolphins, Kyle Krabs. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Talk to you all again soon.